Welcome to another Colors of Prog. I'm Louis Paul. Colors of Prog. I discuss progressive rock, past, present, and various bands, a variety of albums internationally. This is an appreciation and reflection on the music of Alan White, the lead drummer for Yes. Took me longer than I thought amount of time to actually put this together because he had a very lengthy career as a percussionist, and I just tried to listen to as much as I possibly could to get a better handle on the good stuff. So, without further ado, Alan White was born on June 14th, 1949 in Pelton, County of Durham, in England. While his father had played piano in local pubs while holding down various day jobs, his grandfather also played piano and drums. His parents, Alan White's parents, purchased an Ajax drum kit for his 12th birthday. No, his 12th Christmas. Sorry about that. And then later on, a Ludwig kit. Alan joined his first band at age 13. It's pretty young. The Downbeats. The Downbeats played cover songs by then popular acts, the Beatles, the Searchers, and they changed their name to the Blue Chips. Downbeats played a lot of local bars, pubs, and they got a recording contract, and they actually went into the studio and recorded a few singles, which did not sell, and the Blue Chips disbanded. I kind of like the name, the Downbeats, personally. I think it would have been a better name for them to stick with. A variety of stints as a drummer in bands led to early 60s rock bands led by Billy Fury and the like, led Alan White to the notice of Animals co-founder Alan Price. Price formed the Animals in 1962 but left temporarily in 1965 to form the Alan Price Set, a band that had a decidedly less grungy R&B sound and a more of a jazzy swing to it. That band, the Alan Price Set, also featured three horns. Alan Price toured with the Alan Price Set, and it appears on two albums at least. A Price on His Head in '67, and This Price Is Right in 1968. For those who are collector oriented and really want to find the stuff, it's quite enjoyable. R&B, jazzy music with horns. It's quite nice. Around this time, John Lennon of the Beatles personally called Alan White to drum for an impromptu gig he was forming, a live performance at the Toronto Rock and Roll Revival Festival in Canada. Legend has it, and I think I've read some interviews with Alan White, where he had said he didn't believe that was actually Lennon calling him for the job of drumming, because he grew up on the Beatles, and the Beatles had already broken up by this period, and he was a little unsure. No, they didn't break up; they were close to breaking up. Sorry, but he was a little unsure of playing with John Lennon, but apparently Lennon called back. So that show, featuring Lennon, Yoko Ono, Eric Clapton on guitar, Klaus Vormann, a Beatles confidant and member of Manfred Mann on bass, and Alan White on drums, did this chaotic, shambolic gig, eventually released his live piece in Toronto. It's a rock and roll wall of sound, which probably was just as chaotic for the musicians to play as it is for us to listen to, because apparently they hardly had any rehearsal time. Lennon must have liked Alan White and his interesting drumming style, because Alan White also appeared on the Instant Karma single in 1970, as well as Lennon's Imagine album in 1971. Alan White worked with another Beatle, George Harrison. He's on All Things Must Pass, a thoroughly mammoth project, but also included Eric Clapton, Dave Mason, Bobby Whitlock, Peter Frampton, Gary Brooker from Procol Harum, and you would need a phone book-sized magazine to detail all who appeared on here. Sometimes many of the musicians added additional tracks to those already recorded. It's a Phil Spector production. They didn't earn the moniker the producer of the Wall of Sound for nothing. There are now versions of All Things Must Pass without the Phil Spector production, stripped down actually, and it still sounds rather huge. So it's nice. Alan White got to work with another Beatle, George Harrison, on All Things Must Pass, and his drumming's really nice on that. But nearly everybody who appeared on All Things Must Pass did extra duties. It said Alan White played keyboards. So and so, who was a keyboard player, played drums. It was just that much of a huge project. Probably one of the best of the Beatles solo albums, for sure. Again with Lennon, Alan appears on Live Jam, side 3 of Lennon's 1972 album, Sometime in New York City. This was an album, a lot of political stances on it. A lot of the songs were very much angry and reactionary to a lot of things going on in the world and in the United States at the time. Lennon's band was the Elephant's Memory Band, a kind of a horn-driven, funky psychedelic band from the New York area, I believe. And Alan White appeared with Lennon in a UNICEF charity concert from England, I believe, in December 1969. Live Jam is a side long, and Alan appears on that. All right, and that's pretty much leading us up to where we're heading now. So it's Bill Bruford had been Yes's original drummer since 1968 and appeared on their first 5 albums, including Close to the Edge in 1972. It was during the Close to the Edge tour, also in 72, when Bruford left and Alan White replaced him. Now, interesting thing, I learned that Bruford was very busy doing other things, and their rehearsals for the Close to the Edge studio material, as well as the rehearsals for the Close to the Edge tour, the band, yes, the other members, Steve Howe, Chris Squire, John Anderson, I believe it was Rick Wakeman at this period. It was trying to get together to rehearse. And Bruford wasn't always available, so Alan White would step in. So with Bruford moving on to King Crimson, and less than 2 weeks before the beginning of the tour for Close to the Edge, Alan White is the new Yes drummer. Pardon me. So things they worked on were songs from the previous Fragile tour, which featured Bruford, as well as other Yes songs. And so there's a live recording of this called Yes Songs. It's a 1973 released triple LP. Those things don't come out anymore like that. Documenting 2 tours. The Fragile tour, so Bruford appears on some cuts, and the Close to the Edge live tour with Alan White appearing. Really interesting live recording because Yes was still a hungry band. They had a monumental success with Fragile, and Close to the Edge really was a different sounding album for them. It was less song oriented as much as suite oriented. The whole symphonic Prague thing really got tightened with that. Tales from Topographic Oceans, released in late 1973. It's coming. This is a tweaking of the Roger Dean cover that he did for the Steven Wilson remixes. So Tales from Topographic Oceans, released in late 1973, featured a bit of a different Yes sound with 4 6-minute songs over 2 vinyl albums. It's a thematic series of movements, often attributed to singer-composer John Anderson's then interest in Eastern mysticism and ancient civilizations. Isn't that a mouthful? There's a lot of good stuff on this. White received his first Yes co-writing credit for the Remembering, a 20-plus minute track, one of 4 songs of such length that when the album was initially released, it confounded nearly everyone, but today many Yes aficionados proclaim it a career highlight for the band. White's best drumming here is, of course, on the Revealing Signs of God, The Ancient and the Ritual. And I'm sure this is just the beginning for FM radio stations where, as well as the label, the record label, where how you're going to pull a single from this. It was done. They did edit down some 6 or 7 minute songs down to 3 or 4 minute singles, but when you have a 20-minute song, it's a little bit more difficult to do. So then we move on to Relayer, which is this one. Isn't that a beautiful Roger Dean cover? Relayer, released in late 1974, saw the departure of keyboardist Rick Wakeman. He joined the band with Fragile, stayed through Topographic Oceans, but would leave and return many times over the years. Sort of like Bill Bruford, as already mentioned in my Bill Bruford program on Colors of Prague. Bruford would leave, yes, come back, etc. Several musicians were noted to kind of go for the job of replacing Rick Wakeman, including Eddie Jobson and Vangelis, who would later collaborate with John Anderson on some duo projects. But Patrick Moraz, the Swiss-born keyboard player from the one-and-done progressive music band Refugee, was chosen. So Relayer is even more of a difficult work for a drummer because it has much more jazzy leaning songs, and fusion was very popular at this time period, 1974. So it's like one of the few albums you could find Yes experimenting even more so with the jazz and fusion material. There's only 3 songs spread out over the 2 sides, and it's pretty fascinating stuff. Gates of Delirium is on side 1. Sound Chaser and To Be Over are on side 2. So this definitely has some funky jazz leading, but in a way it's a bit experimental. And again, I'm sure it was cause for Atlantic Records, the band's then label, like I just said about Topographic Oceans. How do you edit down a 20-minute song into a 3 or 4 minute single? But luckily, FM radio, album sides, and freeform radio were birthing around this point. And unfortunately, and unluckily, prog rock was falling out of commercial favor with listeners and audiences, save for the most loyal and diehard. But Alan White moments on relay, all three songs. The Mraz contributions notwithstanding. Mraz is a very good keyboardist. I don't think always he was a great fit for Yes, but he did fine work here. Yes decided to take a year plus break around this time period, and pretty much every member released a solo album around this time. And yes, we have no bananas today. Somebody's going, isn't he prepared? Yes, I am. Alan White's solo album is Ramshackled. It was released in the summer of 1976. Alan White just plays percussion, and he left singing and songwriting credits to musicians he met and played with in a variety of bands, including the pre-Yes Alan Price set. Unfortunately, it's an unusually unfocused record with a lot of pop, soul, light rock sounds, very much popular at the time. There's very little progressive rock music on Ramshackled, uh, save for a Spring Song of Innocence based on a William Blake poem that Yes bandmates Steve Howe and John Anderson appear on. And it's a bit Yes sounding for that. One of the cooler things about the Alan White album, the music not so much, is that the album cover itself was released in a textured sleeve. So remove the plastic. I don't know if you could see that. And it had quite a few fun inserts, like somebody took the time down to write all the lyrics. It's very cool. A thing you don't find pretty much today. And there's an inner sleeve featuring some of the band members. And pretty much, as I said, these were people that Alan White had worked with along the way. And he met from the Alan Price set years ago and other bands. And nice photo sleeve. It's rather hard to find this nowadays. Are the other Yes band member solo albums better or worse? It's not for me to say, but I just want to take note of that album. Now, around that same period, and much more interesting, is that Alan White worked with jazz saxophonist Eddie Harris. Eddie Harris in the UK. The Eddie Harris London sessions. Now everybody, if you're into music, you might know there was the Chuck Berry sessions. There were the Howlin' Wolf sessions. Muddy Waters sessions with British musicians working with American bluesmen. And in this case, an American jazz player went over to the UK and he worked with a lot of really interesting people. Alan White appears on 4 of the 6 tracks. The other drummer is someone unknown to me, probably a jazz musician. But we also have Albert Lee on guitars, Jeff Beck on guitar, Steve Winwood on keyboards. Ian Pace played drums a lot, Deep Purple. There's just a phenomenal amount of people on this thing. It's very cool. It's very jazzy. It's also very experimental in a way. So here's a quick look at who's appeared on it. And again, this is called Eddie Harris, EH in the UK, Eddie Harris in the UK, the Eddie Harris London Sessions. And actually, Alan White's drumming on this is pretty damn good because it also shows the kind of work he did pre-Yes when he was working with the Alan Price set. 1976-77 was the solo albums tour. It was planned to fulfill tour commitments and the idea that the band perform selections from their solo albums, the band being Yes, amongst Yes songs, but it was reconfigured to be part live Relayer tour and part the solo albums tours. Audience reactions were not entirely favorable for whatever reason, but that took place in those people who saw the Relayer solo or solo albums tours, which reached some very interesting music. Alan White, now living in Seattle, Washington, would often play with local musicians around this time period, and local bands including Merkaba and Treason. White enjoyed playing with these local bands when Yes was not working on songs or touring, and music he played with them was a little bit less progressive, more hard rock, more hard pop style. They recorded quite a few demos, Merkaba and Treason together. And in 2005, Jeff Downs, Yes's keyboard player, recorded some overdubs. And the record was released and attributed to White, probably capitalizing on Alan White's name, in 2006. So demos from the mid-70s, 76, 77, surfaced so far down the road. But again, the band White, it's good, enjoyable music. It's not, there's not anything on the White album that will challenge you as a listener, but it's well done. Going for the One, as you see, I'm discussing a lot of Yes music because it's kind of hard to discuss the career of the drummer without discussing all the Yes music. And it was not my intention, but there was the only way around it. Going for the One, released in the summer of 77, saw the return of Rick Wakeman, and it was recorded in Montreux, Switzerland in the fall of 76 to spring of 77. It was, for many, a return to Yes and Yes's more progressive roots, originally featuring only 5 tracks, including the title song, Going for the One, and Turn of the Century. And Turn of the Century has an Alan White co-writing credit, which is nice. For me, this is one of the great late period Yes albums. Wondrous Stories, Awaken, an Alan White showstopper with a variety of percussive influences. It's a winner. A lot of people don't like Going for the One. I do, but I met fans who do like it. It's a kind of a thing you have to go back to years later to truly, I wouldn't say truly appreciate, but get a different outlook on it, a different perspective. Later reissues of the Going for the One CD, later on Rhino Records, include some interesting rehearsal session material as well as an extended redo of Simon and Garfunkel's America, which they recorded previously. It's nice to hear different takes of things, and the rehearsal stuff is pretty cool actually on this. Really nice thing here. I like the album. It's one of my favorites, and they would not perform Going for the One too much live, but Awaken is something they had recorded and performed. Tomato This one. 1978, and for a while now, we've been getting away from the Roger Dean designed album covers, and they've been working with Hypnosis, who everyone remembers from Pink Floyd album covers. Tomato is the last Yes album for a while, featuring both John Anderson and Rick Wakeman. Much of Tomato was written during soundtracks and rehearsals for the previous tour in 1977, the Going for the One tour. It's an odd collection of songs inspired by ecology, Don't Kill the Whale, Old English folk music, madrigal, science fiction movies like Close Encounters, Arriving UFO, only Release, which has Alan White's drumming double track for a larger sound, seems to be more reminiscent of the Yes we knew. Well, from earlier years. But a lot of people really like Tomato, and Release is quite a nice song. Yes songs, Yes shows. Yes Songs was the other live album. Yes shows features 5 songs from the Going for the One tour, Parallels, Time of the Word, Going for the One, Don't Kill the Whale, written for Tomato and Wonder Stories, written for Tomato and Going for the One. And it features, this live album features 2 songs with Patrick Moraz from the Relayer tour. Ritual, split into 2 parts, and Gates of Delirium. And both the Alan White tracks, Patrick Moraz tracks are from 1976. To find document of the Yes during this period, Alan White still showing to really propel the band. Well, he does it very well because he's been doing it for years after this tour. But Yes shows. It's a good live document. A lot of people forgot about that one. Reduced to a trio of Steve Howe, Chris Squire, and Alan White, Trevor Horn and Jeff Downs of popular MTV darlings The Buggles joined Yes for Drama, released in 1980. Apparently, Rick Wakeman had become disillusioned with the music of Yes, and Anderson took a little break due to exhaustion of his vocal cords. It's a Drama, a very well-liked album. I actually have the vinyl here as well. I just pulled this out of simplicity. Whatever else, the new Yes produced 6 new songs on Drama. And it was certainly different, and although Trevor Horn's voice sounded very close to John Anderson, the songs were more pensive and uplifting. 3 years later, and there is a new Yes album in sound. Steve Howe and Jeff Downs joined Asia. Chris Squire and Alan White considered joining Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin as XYZ. Get it, XYZ. Squire heard demos by guitarist Trevor Rabin and Tony Kaye returned on keyboards. John Anderson heard what the band was doing, and they were then thinking of calling themselves Cinema. Anderson rejoined the band as lead vocalist. Trevor Horn moved from lead vocalist to co-producer and backup singers. 90215. Oh, there's the Drama album, as we're saying. I did pull it out. I quite like Drama, actually, by the way, and I think it's pretty damn terrific. It's a different Yes sound, but 90125. Yes, not the cheesy CW TV series. 90125, released in 1983, brought a different Yes sound, and it revived the band to all new audiences. John Anderson, Chris Squire, Trevor Rabin, Alan White, and Tony Kaye. You know, people say some of Alan White's best drumming's on Drama, And some people say Alan White's best drumming is on some of the earlier albums like Topographic Oceans and Relayer. And some people say Fly From Here. I say, with that new big sound, there's some great drumming on this. Uh, there were so many hit singles on this. It was like, what? Owner of a Lonely Heart, Hold On, It Can Happen, Changes, Leave It. There's just terrific stuff. It was released in 1983, and it just shows how powerful Alan White's drumming can become in a different, more harder rocking environment. Good stuff. So interesting is that there were dance tracks pulled for this. There were remixes galore. Owner of a Lonely Heart. I have some for some of the other songs on there. Also from that tour, rather harder to find nowadays, was 9012 Live, the solos. This was on Atco Records, but strangely got deleted rather quickly. It's a strange bird, this one, because there's a version of Hold On originally available on video cassette. Yes, it says that. There's a Tony Kaye solo original song, a Trevor Rabin solo, John Anderson solo on Soon, Changes, Amazing Grace. It's just not quite sure what the whole thing was with this. Maybe that's why they got deleted. They needed to put out, or they wanted to put out, or the label wanted the band to put out some live product, and they cherry-picked the strangest things. This was recorded in Germany in '84, and in Edmonton, Canada in '84. And there was now I'm trying to find this movie on VHS, 9012 Live. And some of the tracks, I believe, were lost. So they had a remaster from the video cassette. Is the back of that. Anybody wants to go track that down? It was on Atco. It took a couple of years for 1987's Big Generator to appear. And by then, album-oriented rock had changed, as well as the progressive rock landscape. Essentially the same band as 90125. It's even more like then very popular bands like Styx, then undergoing their own resurrection and renaissance, and hit makers like Toto. Rhythm of Love is the one big hit on this one. And it would find itself also recycled into endless remixes, some for dance clubs. Who would have thought? Yeah, like the 90125 album cover, the Big Generator one was like, yeah. And you weren't sure if you were getting a maxi single or not. Rhythm of Love is a pretty damn terrific song, but a lot of the other songs are, I don't know. It feels like a strong case of a collision of styles occurred when Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe, were working on music, and these guys would often clash. It's no secret. So why it took so many years later for Anderson, Squire, Rabin, and Tony Kaye to come up with an Alan White, to come up with a follow-up that just was not as cool. Here's one of those Rhythm of Love remixes. A lot of us have these. Do we play them? I don't know. It's another thing. So, there's another break after this, and Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe had their own band and tour, ABWH, and they were searching for material for their second album, and the Rabin Anderson version of Yes could not come up, according to whatever you read and wherever you read it, proper material for their big generator follow-up, and they probably didn't want to wait another 5 years. So what we had instead was Union. Sorry for the glare. From 1991, the Rabin, Squire, Anderson, Kay, and White version of Yes appears on 4 songs, while Anderson, Steve Howe, Rick Wakeman, Bruford, guitarist Jimmy Hohen, Steve Porcaro from Toto, Billy Sherwood joining the band as extra guitarist and bass player, Tony Levin on bass, and others would handle other duties. It was a Union tour. A pseudo-legit recording of that is the only thing we have aside from bootleg material. That was released on the Gonzo label in 2011 and re-released a decade later in 2021. That live tour was chaotic, just to be kind. Just too many musicians on stage. Some interesting music came out of the Union album and the Union tour. But as a whole, it was just too much. Talk, released in 1994 on the independent Victory Music label, features the Anderson, Rabin, Kay, Squire, and White version of Yes. The anemic Peter Max designed album cover only hints at the uneven music included, although the calling and the epic length Endless Dream are quite good. Alan White, as usual, quite good on the drums. Rabin and Kay left Yes, and Steve Howe and Rick Wakeman returned, barely resting from the Yes tour. This version of Yes recorded 2 tracks in the studio, Be the One and That Is, a nearly 20-minute song reminiscent of Something I Relay. Keys to Ascension released in 1996 on the small CMC International label, also showcased live music recorded in March 1996. Keys to Ascension 2, which we also have here, only released in the US on Purple Pyramid, another indie label, in 2002, featured one side of live music from the same 1996 show as the first disc on Keys to Ascension, and the second CD contained songs originally developed for Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe, Anderson and Vangelis, and the aborted XYZ sessions with Jimmy Page. That being the song Mind Drive. All 18 minutes of it. It's a highlight of the studio songs on Keys to Ascension 2, and for Alan White's drumming. 1997, Open Your Eyes was released. Wakeman had left the band again, but Billy Sherwood, who played on Union and toured the band as additional guitarist on the Union Talk Tours, also contributed to the production of both Keys to Ascension and Open Your Eyes. He joined the band as a second guitar player and keyboardist. Interesting. Much of the music contains themes and lyrics familiar from Anderson solo albums and the Chris Squire, Billy Sherwood band Conspiracy. They would also work together outside of Yes, and Circa, another band with Billy Sherwood, Chris Squire, and Alan White worked in some of the material for Circa. The latter, released in 1999, is one of those albums that divides fans of Yes. While Homeworld, the latter, and New Language are reminiscent of earlier past long form symphonic type Yes songs, quite much of the rest of the album is different. Magnification, yes, that one. From 2001, the last official Yes album to feature John Anderson, is a welcome sound to most loyal and longtime band fans. Without a keyboardist and without Billy Sherwood, this presents Anderson, Howe, Squire, and White, and an orchestra presenting the band in a favorable light. There's much to like about Magnification, including a title track, and most pointedly in the presence of, which is a suite. And it's funny, the song in the presence of began as a piano motif that Alan White came up with. While recording or rehearsing, White would often play keyboards in the studio. And this is the moment where what he created propels the song. John Anderson kept hearing Alan White tinkering on the piano, said, I like that. And they incorporated it to In the Presence of, which is one of the really good late great Yes songs. Symphonic Live, recorded in 2001 on tour in Europe, Amsterdam specifically, actually has Tom Breslin assisting on keyboards with full orchestra, the European Festival Orchestra. Pardon. It contains nice representations of the band with orchestra, of the band's music with orchestra of classic Yes, including two standouts from Magnification, the two best songs on there I just mentioned. With a number of starts and stops and trying to get new songs together after a hiatus of several years, John Anderson contracted a respiratory illness. Benoit David, who was discovered by Yes and the Canadian tribute band Close to the Edge, joined in 2008. Trevor Horn from the Drama Union days was asked to produce the next record, which not only featured returning Jeff Downes from that drama version of Yes, but Oliver Wakeman, Rick's son, who appears on 4 songs. While being a not quite Yes lineup in the eyes of many since Anderson had not returned, and it's a quite good symphonic prog album, and features Benoit David's voice to good effect. Fly From Here, 2011, and it's a different sound for Yes. I really think Trevor Horn did really good stuff as a producer working with the band, and I really wish he would work with them again as a producer because he's very intuitive to what the Yes sound should be like. And I think it's sometimes lost by current Yes members producing their own albums and losing touch of what made that sound so big and expansive and symphonic. Um, Unfortunately, during the 2011 and 2012 tour for Fly From Here, Benoit David also had respiratory issues. Foo Fighters drummer Taylor Hawkins, the late Foo Fighters drummer Taylor Hawkins, recommended John Davison, formerly a member of the progressive rock band Glass Hammer and bassist for psychedelic rock band Sky Cries Mary, to be lead singer, because it was decided that Benoit David could no longer perform because of the strain on his voice. As of February 2012, John Davidson became the new lead singer for Yes. 2 years later, they released Heaven and Earth and Frontiers Records, infamously produced by Roy Thomas Baker, who produced Queen, Journey, The Cars, Starcastle. It's more than likely the least liked studio album of any incarnation of Yes. Unfortunately, the last studio album to feature Chris Squire. saying nothing more about heaven and earth would be a more kinder route for me to take, because I'm sure there are people that like it more than I do. Although it seems like we get a live Yes album released on a or it seemed like we used to get a live Yes album released on a yearly basis. Some record as far back as 2014, Like It Is, Yes at the Mesa Arts Center. There has not been one since the Royal Affair, live in Las Vegas, which I believe was 2019. Um, Health issues began to plague Alan White. Um, it's been known he's had some back issues, and he just really had difficulties over the last few years. The pandemic didn't help things, the COVID pandemic, and so the band had to stop and cancel some dates. They were including their Cruise to the Edge appearances, but we're talking whole tours, just everything. Everybody, every touring musician went to a standstill. Pretty much it began the March of 2020, 2019 going into 2020, and then by only things started to loosen up in 2022. So with over 40 studio albums and live albums and over 3,000 live shows, time will take its toll on a drummer. Jay Sheldon, the percussionist who had played with Peter Banks, World Trade, an on-again, off-again band featuring Billy Sherwood and occasionally Chris Squire. They released 3 albums in nearly 30 years. And Circa replaced Alan White briefly when Alan just couldn't perform as a drummer in 2016. In 2017, Sheldon and Alan White played together in some dates. And by much of 2019, Jay Sheldon would play the drums, and they brought Alan White on for the great hits at the encore songs, Roundabout, and sometimes he was assisted by Jay on percussion. In 2017, all surviving members of Yes, or most of them, were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is a nice treat. For fans of the band and for the band members, they had it coming. A great body of work. Alan White passed recently, and May of 2022, I believe, and they had originally they announced a Relayer tour of the Europe and the UK, and then they changed it to a Close to the Edge tour. And approximately 5 days after that announcement of the tour, they said Alan White will not be playing. Jay Sheldon will be subbing for him. And about a few days after that, Alan White passed. It was a great shock to the entire music world and to Yes fans, so he's well remembered. He's always well remembered as a very nice person. If you encountered him, he had a kindness about him, and the stories he could tell, all the people he's met over the years, and all the bands he's played with, and all the musicians he's played with. So it's quite a shock to the world of Yes music and Yes fans. And one of his last contributions to the band was The Quest. It's the last Yes studio album produced by Steve Howe to feature contribution by Alan White on drums. And while it's nice Roger Dean cover, right? But while it's not a return to symphonic highlights of Yes in previous years, and this was recently released in 2021, 2022, it by all means is not terrible. Nice that they acknowledge Jay Sheldon, who actually drums in some of the material in here as well. So The Quest. So now Sheldon is the official drummer of Yes. And it's nice to see they acknowledged him. And That's our Alan White tribute show. It was not my intention to go over all this Yes music, and I really try to keep these things at 20 minutes, and we're heading toward 50. So, thank you for watching. Sorry for the occasional coughing fit. Talk for an hour, it's not easy. So, I hope you like this Colors of Prague. It's not what I usually do. I usually take about 4 or 5 albums, different bands, or maybe one band's 5 best albums or whatever. I talk about that. I'm more in depth on the music. I'm more in depth on the musicians and such. But this was kind of all expansive, and I've been working on this for a long time. So it's like a greatest hits of the drummer's career. I met Alan White. He seemed to me a pretty cool guy, pretty nice guy, and yeah, the music world and the progressive rock world, we're gonna miss him. And so, thanks for watching The Colors of Prague. Stay well out there. I'll be back soon.